Sorry about that. The stream shut down. I think there was like a bug in the internet or something because it came right back, but it still shut everything down. But never fear. We're coming right back for the stories and the gameplay.
To address and confront the moral objections to his work. And although not everyone was convinced it justified grave robbery, they could clearly see the benefits that his knowledge brought. The controversy surrounding John Hunter was different to many other scientific controversies because this wasn't a scientist exploring the unknown in a cavalier fashion. He had a specific goal in mind with which no one could disagree. He wanted to advance medical science. Rather, it was the morality of his methods that was called into question. And today, 200 years later, doctors can face similar dilemmas. One of the most emotive issues in science today is not the use of dead humans in medical research, but the use of living animals. To many people, experimenting on animals is morally unacceptable. It's a line we should not cross. Such is the strength of feeling that there are regular protests against the institutions and scientists who use animals in their research. This is not a modern phenomenon. In Britain, there's been a long history of animal rights activism. The first Royal Commission into the use of animals in research dates back to 1875. But in the eyes of many doctors, it's a necessary evil because of the medical advances animal testing brings. "13-year-old Sean Gardner had been paralysed for 7 years by a condition related to Parkinson's disease called dystonia. Until in 2006, he underwent a pioneering procedure. By passing current through electrodes implanted deep in Sean's brain, the surgeon Tipu Aziz was able to instantly relieve his symptoms.
He would be able to talk again. He would be able, hopefully, to participate in activities that are absolutely critical, like a normal education, and perhaps go out again and be a kid."
Within weeks, Sean was standing and walking again. It is in many ways a miraculous achievement. But this procedure remains controversial because Professor Aziz developed the technique by experimenting on macaques that had been deliberately given Parkinson's disease. How many primates were affected or were used in that research?
I would say across the groups, probably less than 100 monkeys were used.
Bullshit.
And to date, about 100,000 people have had deep brain stimulation for Parkinson's disease.
So I suppose a common public criticism of research in higher primates is that it's somehow a luxury. You know, it could be done in some other way. It may take a bit more time, maybe more expensive, but it could be done. So how would you respond to that?
Well, my response to that would be it could not be done because you can't replace an animal model with a cellular culture or computer modeling or imaging. And the advantage of using non-human primates is that, like us, they're bipedal. They're wired the same as us. And I never had any doubts about the benefits that accrued from the work that I was privileged to be involved in. Because this problem was so pressing, you see. These are patients who can't walk, fall over, drugs don't help them. And what you see is quite miraculous, that these folks who are sitting in a chair, trembling, rigid, unable to move. And then you put electrodes into a target in the brain and see them suddenly getting up and walking like a normal person, regaining their dignity as a human being. It leaves you in no doubt about what you do.
At what
And I'm
expense?
not embarrassed about what I do.
Monkeys and other animals have to be tortured in order for us to get a select few of people to thrive.
The animal testing issue reveals an uncomfortable truth about science.
Where did that go?
In order to generate the advances we want in areas like medicine, there are downsides and difficult decisions to be made. But it's my view that in Britain, we get the balance broadly right, partly because of our long history of dissent and protest. The relationship between science and the public has always been a complex one. I think, in general, this great endeavour to understand the workings of the natural world is supported, and why not? I would argue that science is the foundation of our technological civilization. It's given us modern medicine, it's given us telecommunications, computing, air travel, the internal combustion engine, you name it. But even so, there seems to have been an underlying suspicion that there's something sinister there. Scientific progress is valuable, vital even. It might be that occasionally we reveal a monster. Understanding the atom did indeed give us the nuclear bomb. But that knowledge also opened up so many other opportunities. The thing about science, as with the acquisition of all knowledge, is that once it's out there, it can't be retracted, and you never know where it's going to lead. But having said that, even some of the most controversial discoveries have paid dividends in the end. In 1805, Giovanni Aldini was hounded from Britain for trying to resuscitate people using electricity. But now, we find machines that can do exactly that, all over the place. This is a defibrillator. You'll find them in many public places around the world, and it's probably the best chance you'd have of surviving a heart attack down here. It is essentially a battery connected to electrodes. The idea is that administering an electric shock can restart a stopped heart. So this is exactly what Aldini had in mind. It uses electricity to bring people back from the dead. Maybe he wasn't such a Frankenstein after all. Next time, I'll be looking at where some of Britain's greatest discoveries came from. And asking whether we benefit more from science when we know what we're looking for, or whether the best ideas come out of the blue.
See, now here we go.
Kurtop here, and these are 100 finds that still no one can explain. Melted steps. The stairs at the Temple of Hathor in Dendera raise many questions among archaeologists and researchers. These steps, located in one of the best-preserved temples of ancient Egypt, look as if they were exposed to incredibly high temperatures, which could have led to their deformation and partial melting. The surface of the steps shows unusual bends and recessed areas that are not typical for the normal wear of stone structures. There are various theories to explain this phenomenon. One hypothesis suggests that the steps could have been damaged as a result of some unknown thermal impact, for example, ritual fires or processes associated with ancient technologies. Another theory points to possible construction errors. If the stones for the steps were formed directly on site from a liquid solution, then the interruption of the hardening process could have led to an irregular shape and softness of the material. Scientists are still studying this phenomenon, adding another mystery to the rich heritage of ancient Egypt. The first calculator from the 17th century. Did you know that Blaise Pascal was not only a brilliant mathematician, but also invented amazing things? Here is one of his stories that will show you how talent and adventurism can work together to create something unique. In the 17th century, Pascal embodied his idea in the form of the first arithmetic adding machine, which was called Pascaline. It was already the second calculating machine, but the first one that was actually built and used. So how did it all start? Blaise Pascal was inspired by his father, who worked with taxes and faced financial problems and charges of treason. Then the young Pascal came up with the idea to create a mechanism that would facilitate the calculation of tax collections. After all, then everyone did the calculations on the counting boards. In 1642, when Blaise was 19 years old, he took on the project. A couple of years later, and after much revision and research, he created a machine that looked like a shoebox with dials on top, gears and windows to display calculations. Unfortunately, Pascaline could only add numbers since the gears could only rotate in one direction. But using a clever nines complement math trick allowed to subtract numbers. Although the device was not simple inside, the Pascaline caused delight among the people, since this level of automatism had not existed until then. Blaise Pascal later made about 50 of these machines and sold about 20 of them. The introduction of these machines was hampered by their high cost and complexity of production. Plus, France only in 1799 switched to the metric system in monetary calculations. So, thanks to the courage and ingenuity of Blaise Pascal, the Pascaline was created, a calculating machine that greatly facilitated calculations and became the forerunner of modern calculators. As you can see, sometimes unusual ideas and adventurism can lead to the discovery and creation of unique things that change the world. Remember this story the next time you hear about some weird invention, because it could be something truly great. Skeleton of a woman with an anomaly. Recently, scientists from the University of Lisbon came across an amazing find. They discovered the skeleton of a woman with a huge bone outgrowth on her thigh. This outgrowth, they learned, was formed after a very serious injury, due to which the woman probably had great difficulty in moving. This unique skeleton was found in 2002 on the territory of an ancient necropolis near the Church of St. Julian in Portugal. Here, archaeologists have found the remains of 106 adults and 45 children who lived between 600 and 200 years ago. The woman whose skeleton they discovered was small, only 1.54 meters, but despite all the difficulties, she lived for more than 50 years. When scientists found her, she was lying on her back with her hands resting on her pelvis and her head turned to the right. A very unusual detail was a coin they found on her left forearm. On the woman's thigh was an 8-centimeter outgrowth that formed at the point where the muscle connects the femur and pubic bones. Interestingly, the researchers found no evidence of a hip fracture. This confirms the assumption that the woman suffered a serious muscle injury shortly before her death and lived with it from 6 weeks to a year. This outgrowth, of course, created problems for the woman in terms of mobility, and probably she could not make active movements or carry heavy loads. However, as it appears, she was not left to fend for herself. Perhaps she had loved ones or even an entire community who helped her cope with the consequences of the trauma. Menstruation and brewing. Have you ever pretended to be sick to avoid going to school or work? Well, you are not alone. Even the ancient Egyptians did this sort of thing. Imagine, scientists from the British Museum stumbled upon a huge stone fragment called an ostracon. There were records on it that date back to about 1250 BC, and do you know what they found there? Exactly, excuses ancient Egyptian workers used to get away from work. This stone journal is maintained 280 days a year and lists the names of 40 workers, and next to each name are the reasons why they missed work. Someone is bitten by a scorpion. Someone is caring for a sick mother. Interesting, right? Some of the reasons sound pretty funny to us. For example, some workers left work to look after their wife or daughter during their periods, and the workers also had to take time off to embalm dead relatives. It was a complex and long process that required attention and time. And of course, let's not forget the beer. In ancient Egypt, beer was a nutritious drink enjoyed by children and adults alike. And yes, the workers sometimes took days off to make it. So guys, if you ever want to take a day off to brew beer, remember, even the ancient Egyptians can envy you. The oldest diamond in the world. Now I will tell you again about precious stones, only very, very ancient ones. The story will not just be about a diamond, but about the oldest diamond on Earth. Just like in movies or treasure books, isn't it? An international team of scientists discovered this unique stone in Russia at the Udakhnaya diamond deposit, which translates as lucky. Here, the name itself speaks of greater luck for the miners. Measuring only 0.3 millimeters, this diamond is smaller than the head of a pin. It lived a very, very long life, and scientists were able to determine his age using sophisticated methods that sound like real magic, isotope dating. Scientists said that the diamond was formed deep underground at a depth of about 140 kilometers. It was very hot there, about 900 degrees Celsius, and the pressure was huge. 37,000 times more than on the Earth's surface. A diamond is 3.7 billion years old. But the most amazing thing is that this diamond deposit is located 20 kilometers from the Arctic Circle, very close to the place where polar bears live. It was here in 1955 that the Soviet geologist Vladimir Shchukin discovered this lucky pipe, and then a whole city was built here for diamond mining. And in this pipe, huge diamonds were found, one of which was named after the great Russian poet Alexander Pushkin. The Qumran Scrolls. These ancient Jewish manuscripts were discovered between 1946 and 1956 in the caves of Qumran near the Dead Sea and revolutionized our understanding of the religious and cultural life of the Second Temple period. The texts cover the period from the 3rd century BC to the 1st century AD and include some of the earliest known versions of biblical books, as well as extra-biblical and deuterocanonical texts, including liturgical, apocalyptic, and legal documents. The biblical manuscripts are especially valuable as they allow us to trace the development of the text of Scripture and provide unique comparative material for analyzing changes in religious texts of the time. These scrolls include fragments of almost all the books of the Old Testament except for the Book of Esther, as well as texts that were previously unknown or lost. The scrolls were likely created or preserved by the Essene community living in the Qumran area. Today, most of the scrolls are kept in the Shrine of the Book at the Israel Museum in Jerusalem, and their study continues. Ice Age art. The Alb Donau Mammoth in Germany is one of the oldest examples of Ice Age art, dating back some 35,000 years. This miniature figurine is carved from mammoth tusk, which in itself is evidence of the skill and artistic flair of primitive people. Discovered in the 1930s, the artifact has become an important link in the study of early human art. What makes this piece special is not only its age, but also its detail. The surface of the figurine is covered with notches, possibly symbolic or decorative, which add to the mystery of the artifact. They may be early examples of communication or spiritual ideas of ancient people. Archaeologists suggest that such figurines could have been used for ritual purposes, acting as talismans for hunters or symbols of good luck. The mammoth, which symbolized strength and endurance, probably played an important role in the worldview of primitive tribes. Roman military camps in Arabia. With the help of a magical Google Earth map, archaeologists from the famous Oxford University have uncovered the secret of 3 ancient Roman military camps hidden between the countries of Jordan and Saudi Arabia. These camps, built about 2,000 years ago, are surprisingly well preserved to this day. These camps were like temporary castles that Roman soldiers built during their travels. They are arranged in a straight line and are located at a distance of 37 and 44 kilometers from each other, as if they were measured with a ruler. All of them are rectangular in shape and have two entrances, like two doors in a house, which are located opposite each other. One of the camps, which is located closer to the west, turned out to be even larger than the other two. But the most interesting thing about this story is that not a single ancient book mentions any military adventures of the Romans in this territory. Scholars think these camps are secret traces of untold battles that took place when the Romans conquered the Nabatean kingdom in 106. After that, this place became known as Arabia Petraea. Double hoard with Viking treasures. Archaeologists have found in Denmark a stunning treasure of ancient silver coins and jewelry, which reveals the secrets about the life of the famous Viking king Harald Bluetooth. This treasure was found on the Jutland Peninsula, not far from the ancient ring fort built by Harald himself around 980. In total, about 300 silver items were found, including 50 coins and jewelry. It turned out that the treasures were hidden in two different places under buildings that no longer exist. Archaeologists thought that the person who buried the treasure deliberately divided it into parts so as not to lose everything at once. By the way, the treasure was discovered by a woman with a metal detector. Most of the items found are chopped silver or hacksilver. These are pieces of silver jewelry that could be weighed and sold, but among the treasure there were also silver coins from Arab and German countries, as well as from Denmark. Of particular interest are Danish coins with a cross, which were minted during the reign of Harald Bluetooth. Harald was one of the first Viking kings to convert to Christianity, and with this new faith he wanted to unite the warring Viking tribes in Denmark. No one knows for sure why he got the nickname Bluetooth. Perhaps he had a bad tooth that was blue-black. This name is still known today as it gave its name to the Bluetooth wireless communication standard. Harald unified Denmark and even ruled part of Norway. He was king until his death in 985 or 986, when he was succeeded on the throne by his son Sweyn Forkbeard. Carvings of incredible beauty. Meet John Matthews, an ordinary guy who loves to look for old treasures in the fields of Wales. One day when he was rummaging through the field, as usual, John stumbled upon something unusual. What he found was older than anything he had ever seen. We are talking about the treasures of the Roman time and the Iron Age. Experts say they may point to a hitherto unknown Roman settlement right there in the field. At first, John did not even understand what he had discovered, but he knew it was something important. Calling a local archaeologist, John helped meticulously dig up a jar and vessel fixture brought there by the Celts and sent them off for study. A few weeks later, our lucky hunter joined the team of archaeologists for deeper excavations. And you know what they found? Archaeologists have found a bowl decorated with a bull's face, as well as other amazing items. John, who had been looking for treasure for 10 years, was amazed by the beauty of the artifacts found. The treasures that John has discovered confirm one important fact. We never know exactly what might be hidden underground. Perhaps there, right under our feet, amazing treasures are waiting in the wings that can reveal to us the secrets of the past. And all we need to find them is a keen eye, a bit of luck, and of course a sense of adventure like our hero John. Semi-precious stones in the sewers. Right under our feet in the English city of Carlisle, archaeologists have discovered amazing ancient treasures from the time of the Roman Empire. Just think, exactly on the spot where the British now play cricket, once there were large pools of Roman baths. These baths were very popular among soldiers and their wives who lived in the 3rd century AD. Do you know what our archaeologist friends found in the drainage channels of these baths? They found a whole collection of semi-precious stones that seemed to have accidentally fallen and were lost in the seething waters of the bath. Imagine, these baths were like real royal palaces, big enough to accommodate 1,000 soldiers and their wives. It's time to dig, and here's what the archaeologists found. Hundreds of glass beads, dozens of women's hairpins, ancient coins, and of course these amazing stones. A total of 36 were found. These were small but very beautiful stones carved from amethyst, jasper, and other semi-precious minerals. Each of them depicted various Roman gods and goddesses. But the question remains, how did these decorations get into the bath's drainage system? In ancient Rome, people loved to wear rings with beautiful gemstones. However, these stones were kept on the rings thanks to a special glue, which unfortunately could weaken in hot water. And so while the Romans enjoyed their bath, the stones probably simply fell out of the rings and fell into the sewer. But then why didn't they just leave the decorations at home, you may ask? Good question. In ancient Roman baths, before entering the pool, people took off their clothes, remaining only in special sandals. Some people hired servants to look after their belongings, but there weren't many of them. In most cases, the attendants of the baths watched over the stuff. However, there were occasional thefts, and some Romans decided to take the risk of taking all their valuables with them to the baths. And it seems that some of them have been lost forever, leaving us with magnificent artifacts to study and admire. Perhaps under our feet there are mysterious jewelry of antiquity, which one of you will definitely discover someday. Write in the comments if you dreamed of finding a treasure of precious coins or ancient treasures, and be sure to tell us what was the most valuable thing you found throughout your life. Also subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Tomb of Tutankhamun. This discovery became one of the most famous archaeological finds of the 20th century. It is the final resting place of the young pharaoh who ruled Egypt from 1332 to 1323 BC during the 18th dynasty. Unlike other royal tombs, its size and decoration are quite modest, which is probably due to the unexpected death of Tutankhamun at a young age. Perhaps this tomb was not originally intended for the pharaoh, but was adapted for him due to lack of time. Despite its modest size, the tomb surprised researchers with the number and magnificence of the burial items. Among the finds were gold jewelry, household items, a throne, furniture, clothing, and of course the famous golden burial mask of Tutankhamun, which became a symbol of ancient Egyptian culture. In total, more than 5,000 artifacts were found, each of which helped to reveal important details about the life and death of the pharaohs. The tomb was discovered in 1922 by British archaeologist Howard Carter and his team. Their discovery caused quite a stir around the world, not only because of the enormous amount of wealth, but also because of the exceptional preservation of the artifacts, which shed light on the reign of Tutankhamun. The most important difference between Tutankhamun's tomb and all others is its preservation. It has been preserved in its original form. This discovery was a landmark event in Egyptology and remains one of the most important archaeological discoveries of all time. Let's hope it is not the last. Strip of Holes in Peru. In the Pisco Valley in Peru, there is a mysterious place known as the Strip of Holes, or Monte Sierpe. It is a narrow strip of land 20 meters wide and about 1,500 meters long, strewn with thousands of shallow pits. Their exact purpose remains a mystery, although scientists have put forward many versions. The site first became famous thanks to an aerial photograph by Robert Shippey, published in the 1930s in National Geographic. Archaeologists have long avoided Monte Sierpe. It was only in the 1950s that Victor von Hagen studied the pits and suggested that they were empty graves, and their total number is estimated at 5,000. Later, John Hyslop put forward a version that the pits were used as warehouses, similar to those found in other places in Peru. Each hole is about 1 meter in diameter and up to 1 meter deep. They are made in different ways. Some are dug into the embankment, others are surrounded by stone walls. Modern research, including a detailed map created with the help of drones in 2015, has shown that the strip of holes consists of 6,000 pits divided into blocks with unique patterns. Nearby are Inca roads and remains of storage facilities, and the pottery found indicates that they originated in the 15th century when the Incas conquered the Chincha people. Archaeologist Charles Stanish believes that the pits could have been used to measure agricultural tribute that local farmers gave to rulers. Other scientists, such as Jean-Pierre Protzen, believe that the strip of holes may be even older. He believes that the pits could have been used to store fertilizers, such as excrement. To this day, the strip of holes remains one of the most mysterious archaeological finds in Peru. Who, why, and how created it are still the subject of debate and new research. Rare statue of Cahuil. Unique statue found in Mexico. This is Cahuil, the Mayan god of lightning and fertility. Archaeologists found it recently when they were building a railway for tourists, the Maya train. This road should be completed by 2024. The statue of Cahuil is part of an urn found near one of the sections of the road. Cahuil is often depicted with a head like a beast, with large eyes, a long snout, and serpentine legs that symbolize lightning bolts. Interestingly, Cahuil's drawings are found on Mayan reliefs and in old books, but so far only 3 statues of this god have been found. They are located in Guatemala in the city of Tikal. Therefore, this discovery in Mexico is a true luck. Experts looking for ancient objects in the area of the road construction have already made many discoveries. So far, they have found over 896,000 pottery, 491 bones, and nearly 49,000 structures or foundations. So the opening of the Cahuil statue is not only interesting, but also a very important event. This allows scientists to learn more about the Maya and their ancient deity. Who knows what other secrets the ancient Maya hide from us? Accidental discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb. Back in 1922, an archaeologist named Howard Carter encountered the greatest discovery of his life. In the Valley of the Kings in Egypt, he discovered the tomb of Tutankhamun, which contained more than 5,000 precious artifacts. But do you know that this expedition might not have happened? Western archaeologists have been exploring the Valley of the Kings since the beginning of the 19th century. When the First World War began, the excavations were suspended and did not achieve great results. At this time, the Earl of Carnarvon, or George Herbert, who financed these excavations, appears on the scene. He was disappointed by the lack of discoveries and was ready to cut off funding. But in 1922, he decided to give a chance to Howard Carter, who was sure that there was something important in the Valley of the Kings. This was the last excavation season in the valley. Working tirelessly, Carter and his team almost lost hope until November 4th, 1922, they opened the tomb of the pharaoh Tutankhamun. It was a huge discovery that surprised the whole world. In the tomb, they found more than 5,000 valuable artifacts that had been lying untouched for 3,000 years. In Carter's book, which was later found, was the address of the Earl of Carnarvon, thanks to whom these excavations took place. The Count unfortunately died the year after the discovery from complications from a mosquito bite. 50 years after Carter's discovery, many of the treasures from Tutankhamun's tomb were on display in the British Museum. The exhibition was so popular that it was extended for 6 months. Over 30,000 people visited it in the first week. On the first day of the exhibition, people stood in line for more than 14 hours to see these unique artifacts. Interestingly, in 1921, Howard Carter was a guest of the Earl of Carnarvon in his castle. This is confirmed by the population census of the time. It's funny that the profession of an archaeologist was not mentioned in Carter's documents. He was called an artist. After Tutankhamun's tomb was completely cleared in 1932, Carter decided to retire from archaeology. He died 7 years later. There was an amazing story about how perseverance and self-confidence led to one of the most important discoveries in the history of archaeology. The path to discovery is not always straight and easy, but it is stories like these that show that even the most difficult obstacles can be overcome. A brewery from the time of Egypt's first rulers. Archaeologists have discovered the world's oldest brewery located in the necropolis of Abydos, Egypt. The discovery not only sheds light on early brewing technology, but also helps us understand how resources were managed during the construction of the pyramids. The complex consists of 8 massive installations up to 20 meters long. Each of them contains 2 rows of 40 vessels that were used to heat a mixture of grain and water, the classic process of brewing beer. Scientists date the brewery to the era of Pharaoh Narmer, who is considered the founder of the First Dynasty. Dr. Adams, who led the study, called the discovery industrial-scale production and noted that it shows a high level of labor organization in ancient Egypt. The ability to manage the mass distribution of resources and organize labor allowed the Egyptians to build grandiose structures, including the pyramids. In addition, beer played an important role in rituals. The large-scale production at Abydos indicates its use in sacrifices, ceremonies, and rituals, confirming its importance in the development of Egyptian royal power. Remains of 2 men in Pompeii. And one more story from the ancient city of Pompeii, where a new unique discovery was made. Archaeologists have found the remains of 2 men who, scientists believe, died during the terrible eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 AD. The skeletons were found under the collapsed wall, and apparently these people were adults, about 50 years old. Anthropologists carefully examined the bones and concluded that they died when the building where they tried to hide from the volcanic eruption collapsed on them. One of them even managed to raise his hand to protect himself from falling debris. In the same room where the remains were found, archaeologists found beads from a necklace and several ancient coins. This will help scientists learn even more about how people lived in those days. Now imagine that Mount Vesuvius, which seemed to be just a beautiful mountain scenery, suddenly erupts, throwing hot lava and poisonous gases into the air. The city of Pompeii, where more than 20,000 people lived, was completely buried under a layer of ash and stones. Most people managed to leave the city before the eruption, but about 2,000 people died. The great eruption of Vesuvius lasted only 17 minutes, but those 17 minutes changed the history of the city forever.
Pilate's Stone. A very important ancient artifact that confirms the existence of Pontius Pilate, the Roman prefect of Judea, famous for his role in condemning Jesus Christ to crucifixion. This fragment of a limestone block was discovered in 1961 in the ancient Roman theater of Caesarea, Israel, and dates back to the 1st century AD. The inscription on the stone is partially preserved but contains key information, a reference to Pontius Pilate and his title Prefect of Judea. This discovery was significant because until its discovery there was no archaeological evidence directly related to this historical figure. The Pilate stone is believed to be the only modern inscription found dating back to Pilate's reign. Its importance lies in the fact that it confirms not only the existence of Pilate, but also the Roman presence in Judea during this period.
Astronomical Compendium of 1550. Here's an interesting fact from archaeology. Once upon a time, there were such devices as astronomical compendiums. These were small tools for complex calculations packed in one box. Astronomical compendiums cost a lot and were a sign of the wealth of their owner. One such compendium, made around 1550 in Augsburg, is made of gilded brass. Such a compendium included many tools, including a passage instrument for determining the time at night from the stars, lists of latitudes, a magnetic compass, a list of ports and harbors, a perpetual calendar, and a lunar indicator. With the help of the astronomical compendium, it was possible to find out the current time, the height of the tide in ports, and perform calendar calculations. All this was so amazing and useful that today it is even difficult to imagine how such complex functions fit in such a small device. Ancient scissors. In China, they found a royal tomb full of treasures, and in the suburbs of Munich, Germany, they discovered a 2,300-year-old Celtic burial. And that's what they found there. In the Munich district of Sendling, an ordnance disposal team searched for the remains of World War II shells at a construction site. They had no idea that they would discover an ancient tomb. After that, archaeologists from the Bavarian State Office for the Protection of Monuments arrived at the site. They dug up the tomb and found many ancient artifacts: a rolled sword, the remains of a shield, a spearhead, a razor, and even a fibula. But the most surprising thing is the 2,300-year-old Celtic scissors, which are so well preserved that they were described as almost new with a slight sheen. Professor Matthias Fiel said that these scissors are so well preserved that they can still be used today. He explained that the excellent condition of the scissors is due to the skill of the Celtic blacksmiths who created them 2,300 years ago. Scientists think these scissors could have been used to cut hair, fabrics, or even sheep shearing. Imagine how much history is hidden under our feet. Sometimes it seems that each step can lead us to new incredible discoveries. So be careful. Who knows what you yourself may find?
DNA of a woman from Paleolithic jewelry. Imagine you find an ancient deer tooth pendant and ask yourself, who wore this pendant? Who owned it? German researchers know the answer to this question, and it's all thanks to DNA. In Denisova Cave, where the pendant was found, scientists were able to extract and analyze the DNA of a woman who wore the pendant about 20,000 years ago. Judging by the DNA, she was a close relative of people who lived at the same time, but further east in Siberia. During excavations, archaeologists are very careful with the finds so as not to contaminate them with modern DNA. They put on gloves and masks, and the finds themselves are immediately placed in clean bags. The soil is removed from the objects already in the laboratory. This method of work proved to be effective. The researchers were able to extract not only the DNA of the deer from whose tooth the pendant was made, but also a large large amount of DNA of the woman herself. Scientists have found as much of the woman's DNA as would normally be found in a human tooth. This means that now scientists can learn about people not only from their remains, but also from the objects they used. This opens up new possibilities for studying our ancestors. However, here's the downside. This method only works on fresh finds, so old artifacts that have been in museums for many years are still a mystery. Meet a new round in the science of archaeology and genetics. Now we can literally touch history, studying not only the subject itself, but also learning about the person who used it. It's like a time machine that allows us to connect ancient objects with specific people and uncover the secrets of the past. Tutankhamun of Kazakhstan. In 1969, a burial site of a man in golden armor was found in Kazakhstan, which became a symbol of the country. Scientists, carried away by 4,000 artifacts, forgot about the remains themselves. The golden armor of a warrior from the 5th century BC, known as the Golden Man, became a symbol of Kazakhstan's independence. It was found in a tomb of the Saka tribe near the settlement of Issyk, 60 kilometers east of Almaty. During excavations, archaeologists discovered remains with gold-decorated armor and many other valuable artifacts. The burial, found by a farmer preparing the land for sowing, remained untouched despite the looting of the main tomb. In a sarcophagus made of spruce logs lay a skeleton decorated with 4,000 gold ornaments. This discovery amazed scientists so much that the human remains initially received less attention. The Golden Man, dubbed the Kazakhstan Tutankhamun, is thought to be an 18-year-old Saka warrior wearing a costume made up of thousands of gold ornaments, including a shirt, boots, and headdress. The costume features animal motifs and a 70 centimeter tall headdress with arrows, snow leopards, and mythical creatures. Archaeologist Janine Davis Kimball has suggested that the remains may be those of a female priestess, citing artifacts found nearby such as a mirror and necklace. In her book, Warrior Women, she theorizes that the Golden Man may have been a woman. The poor condition of the bones after 50 years of exposure to bacteria and viruses makes analysis difficult, but the possibility that the Golden Man was a woman remains open. Regardless of gender, the craftsmanship of the costume is astounding.
Petrified book. Archaeologists from Australia have stumbled upon a mysterious book-shaped artifact estimated to be more than 330 million years old. Yes, I know that not everyone likes it when I talk about thousands and millions of years. Therefore, this discovery caused a lot of controversy and speculation among scientists. Thomas Kaminsky, an antiquities researcher, claims that they found a mineralized book with a metal binding, but it is no longer possible to read it. Archaeology professor Jane Ballum was also amazed by the find, although she expressed doubts about its antiquity. Other experts marvel at how the book's pages have survived for millions of years. Geology professor Ian Plimer explains that under certain conditions, in an oxygen-free environment and under pressure, paper can petrify. Kaminsky believes that the depth at which the book was found indicates its authenticity. However, the question remains as to why the book looks like a modern copy. Could this be an artifact left behind by a time traveler? Stone road at the bottom of the sea. Have you ever heard of roads that are underwater? So archaeologists have discovered just such road in the depths of the sea near the island of Korčula in Croatia. This stone road, located at a depth of about 5 meters underwater, is over 7,000 years old, making it one of the oldest on Earth. Imagine, people who lived long before the construction of the Egyptian pyramids could walk on it. Scientists believe that the road once connected the island of Korčula with a part of the land which is now flooded by the waters of the Adriatic Sea. It's kind of complicated, isn't it? But imagine a road that goes from the island straight into the sea and disappears into its depths. Isn't that cool? This road was so large that its width reached 4 meters. Archaeologists claim that it could have been built by one of the ancient civilizations, possibly the Kavar culture. The researchers discovered it thanks to satellite images, and now they are trying to find out exactly where this mysterious road led. Scientists have even found an artificially created island on this underwater road. They collected wooden fragments from the top of an underwater hill that once had a settlement. Radiocarbon analysis has shown that these fragments are dated to the 5th century BC. With the help of these discoveries, we can look into the past and imagine how our ancient ancestors lived. They created amazing structures that still amaze us with their complexity and skill. And who knows what else they left for us at the bottom of the ocean.
Tomb of Philip II of Macedon. Discovered in Vergina in northern Greece in the late 1970s, the tomb of Philip II of Macedon is one of the most significant archaeological finds in the history of ancient Macedonia. Situated near the necropolis of the ancient capital of Macedonia, Aegae, the tombs are believed to be the final resting place of Philip II, the king of Macedonia and father of the great conqueror Alexander the Great. The tomb is distinguished by the splendor and wealth of the buried artifacts. Archaeologists found weapons, armor, gold and silver objects, including unique precious ossuaries, vessels for storing cremated remains. One of the ossuaries, decorated with a golden wreath of oak leaves and acorns, contained bones believed to belong to Philip II himself. This discovery not only confirmed ancient descriptions of the greatness of the Macedonian kings, but also provided new information about the cultural and burial rites of the elite of that time. The armor and weapons found near the remains indicate the important role of military affairs in the life of Philip II, who not only strengthened Macedonia, but also prepared the ground for the future conquests of his son, Alexander the Great. The oldest map of the world has been deciphered. The British Museum has revealed the secret of one of the oldest maps of the world, a clay tablet from Babylon, created about 3,000 years ago. The so-called Imago Mundi, found in the city of Abu Haba, Sippar, in Iraq, has been kept in the museum's collection since 1882. The tablet depicts a simplified whole world as imagined by the inhabitants of Mesopotamia. The center is occupied by a rectangle of the Euphrates River. Around it are circles and rectangles denoting cities, including Babylon. Everything is surrounded by a bitter river, the salty waters of the Persian Gulf, and the Mediterranean Sea. According to cuneiform specialist Irving Finkel, this is a schematic reflection of the space where people lived and died, and beyond it, according to the tablet, there were 8 remote regions. The Akkadian text on the top and back of the map tells the story of the creation of the world and recounts one version of the story of the Great Flood. According to it, around 1800 BC, God commanded King Utnapishtim to build an ark, the remains of which were supposedly left behind a bitter river on a mountainside. A missing fragment of the tablet discovered in 1995 helped scientists decipher the story more accurately. In addition, the Babylonian god Marduk is mentioned, as well as fantastic creatures such as the Scorpion Man and the lion-headed bird Anzu, confirming the rich mythological world of the Babylonians. Prehistoric lizard 10 meters long. Imagine you are exploring the Texas wilderness and suddenly you stumble upon a huge petrified tail. This is exactly what happened to paleontologist Stephen Cruz of the Perot American Museum of Nature and Science. While walking through North Texas, he noticed a piece of spine sticking out of the ground. But it was not an ordinary lizard spine, but a real ancient sea monster. Continuing the excavation, scientists discovered a fossilized skull, lower jaw, and even more vertebrae of a giant. They realized that they had found the remains of an ancient lizard 10 meters long. Can you imagine? It's like 5 adults lying one after another. And this giant lizard lived in the seas that were there 80 million years ago. Ron Tukoski, museum director and curator of vertebrate paleontology, was not surprised by the find. He explained that in those distant times, almost all of central Texas was underwater. According to him, warm seawaters and an abundance of food created ideal conditions for the life of such giants as mosasaurs. Modern monitor lizards are the descendants of these huge carnivorous lizards that lived alongside dinosaurs during the Cretaceous. The work at the excavation site has not yet been completed, and scientists are looking forward to fall season to return and continue their excavations. Who knows what else they'll find? A miniature wonder. This miniature almanac with an embroidered cover, created in France around 1780, is a true masterpiece of 18th century decorative art. Its dimensions, only 3x7 centimeters, make it not only a work of art but also an intriguing collector's item. Such miniatures were popular among the French aristocracy and served both practical and aesthetic purposes. The cover, made of embroidered fabric, is decorated with an intricate pattern of flowers, which symbolized not only the taste of the era, but also the high skill of the needlewomen of that time. Red and blue decorative elements on the edges give the product additional sophistication. Such almanacs were often given as gifts, accompanied by personal inscriptions or poems, adding even more personal value to the item. Its small size suggests that it was intended to be carried in pockets or handbags, which allowed the owners to demonstrate their refined taste. It may have contained brief notes, calendars, or even love letters, making it a witness to intimate moments of life during those years. The most famous jester of the 16th century. Once upon a time in the 1540s, Jean-Antoine d'Angleray, nicknamed Chicot, was born in France. He was not from a wealthy family, but he was still able to study at the famous Parisian college. However, he loved the sword more than books. At first, Chicot served as a soldier for the Duke of Savoy, then became a courier and then worked for the French king Charles IX. When Charles died, Henry III ascended the throne. Chicot had a sharp tongue, so he quickly became one of the court jesters. The jesters were important people in the royal courts. They entertained and gave advice. For example, before Chicot, there was the famous jester Triboulet. Chicot not only joked, but also fought. He participated in the siege of La Rochelle and became a lieutenant of Henry III. Chicot was smart and funny. People loved him. He married Renée Barré and they had 6 sons. After 10 years, Chicot became a real nobleman. But soon a civil war broke out in France, and Chicot found himself next to the new king, Henry IV. Together they fought and won. Chicot is said to have died a funny and strange death. He captured enemy Henri de Chaligny and brought him to the king. However, Henri hit Chicot on the head and he soon died. However, no one knows for sure how it really happened. Perhaps Chicot simply died of his wounds, as befits a warrior jester. This happened in 1592. That was an interesting story about Jean-Antoine d'Angleray, who was both a funny jester and a brave warrior. The Prince of Egypt, who really loved his cat. Imagine a royal sarcophagus for a cat. This is just such an amazing discovery made by archaeologists. This sarcophagus belonged to a cat who was very fond of Prince Thutmose, the eldest son of Pharaoh Amenhotep III. The prince wanted his furry friend to be well even in death. The goddess Isis herself, spreading her wings, guards the tranquility of the mummy of a cat, and the soul of the cat comfortably settled down at a plentiful table with offerings. On the lid of the sarcophagus is written, "May I find myself among the immortal souls in heaven, for I am Tamit, the righteous." Unfortunately, Prince Thutmose could not enjoy the company of his beloved for too long and soon followed her to heaven. After his death, the younger brother of Thutmose became Pharaoh, known to us as Akhenaten, husband of the delightful queen Nefertiti. This amazing sarcophagus was created during the reign of Amenhotep III around 1391 to 1353 BC and is now kept in the Egyptian Museum in Cairo. Also, do you know how the Egyptians treated cats? Oh, it was true love. They adored little kittens, revered the goddess Bastet of Bubastis, and feared the majestic and stern Sekhmet, one of the incarnations of Hathor. But unfortunately, times are changing. In the era of the Ramessides, when a period of disorder and corruption set in, people began to run cruel businesses. They simply killed the cats, wrapped them in cloth, and sold them, presenting them as consecrated cat mummies. It was a terrible sacrilege, but alas, documents were found in which this story is confirmed. Stories like these make us even more attached to our pets. Imagine how Prince Thutmose took care of his beloved, giving her eternal rest with the help of such a beautiful and expensive sarcophagus. It's really touching. Also, did you know that the Egyptians were among the first to domesticate cats? Yes, friends, they were real cat lovers back when most people saw these animals only as wild predators. And don't forget, every time you pet your cat, you are continuing a tradition that has been going on for thousands of years. Your pets deserve the same love that Prince Thutmose gave his pet Tamit. Keep this in mind and take care of your furry friends. Burial of the Heavenly Guest. In 1901, an expedition of British archaeologists, led by Lord William Campbell, was excavating one of the ancient tombs in the desert near the Giza pyramids. Having opened a massive sarcophagus, the researchers encountered a sensation. Inside was a mummy that was significantly different from all known remains of ancient Egypt. The creature was over 2.5 meters tall, and its skull was unusually elongated and narrow, reminiscent of images of gods on the walls of Egyptian temples. The bones were much denser than human bones, and their structure indicated increased strength, as if intended for life in different conditions. The strangest thing is that there were no traces of embalming or autopsy on the body, but it was perfectly preserved, as if it were in stasis. On the sarcophagus, archaeologists discovered engravings that mentioned a messenger of the stars who arrived during the time of the pharaohs. The hieroglyphs hinted at beings who descended from the sky and taught the ancient Egyptians architecture and astronomy. Some symbols resembled star maps, and the interior walls of the tomb depicted flying disc-shaped objects. The discovery gave rise to many theories, from an alternative history of Egypt's connection with extraterrestrial civilizations to speculation about a lost human race. However, shortly after its excavation, the artifact disappeared without a trace. It was sent to a private collection, and references to it were quickly erased from official records.
Ancient Astro Tomb.
That's wild.
In Spain, in the place where the sleeping giant lives, archaeologists have discovered a treasure that is 5,000 years old. And the sleeping giant is actually a huge rock in the region of Andalusia. The treasure they found is an incredible stone tomb called Piedras Blancas, which translates to white stone. And so archaeologists are sure that this tomb was built at the same time when the most ancient megaliths were created in Antequera. This is about 3000 BC. They even found ceramic offerings next to it. But what is even more amazing is that this tomb was built for a reason, so that it is precisely aligned with the stars. Yes, just like in a sci-fi movie. This means that ancient people used it not only as a tomb, but also as an observation platform for studying the starry sky. They knew where and when important astronomical events such as the solstice and equinox would occur, and most likely they held special rituals and celebrations at this place. These amazing discoveries show us how smart and resourceful our ancestors were. They created incredible structures that served not only as a refuge for the dead, but also as a tool for understanding the world around them. And here we are, thousands of years later, continuing to learn from them thanks to these amazing discoveries.
Clay seals. Scientists excavating the Tol-e-Sanghi site in southern Iran discovered 17 tiny clay objects about 9,000 years old. Experts believe that these are unique seal valley convenient for early agriculture. Radiocarbon dating of the remains of buildings and hearths showed that people lived here from 7050 to 6650 BC. Items of various sizes. Ancient towers of China. In the foothills of the Himalayas, there are amazing stone towers. Some of them are used by local residents as stables and barns, while others are simply abandoned. They started talking about the towers only in 1998, when the French researcher Frédéric Daragon drew attention to them. Frédéric studied these mysterious towers for 5 whole years. She sought information about them from local residents and Buddhist monasteries, but found nothing. As a result, she found references to the towers in Chinese chronicles and records of European travelers of the 19th. Their languages and dialects developed separately, so the history of the towers may have been forgotten. Himalayan towers are unique in their strength. They withstand earthquakes thanks to a mixture of stone, brick, and wood. The towers have different shapes, square, polygonal, and even star-shaped with 12 peaks. They are 600, 1,000 years old, and some are even older. Frédéric suggested that some of the towers served as a symbol of wealth. The inhabitants of the wealthy villages that traded with China could build them as a demonstration of their wealth. Other towers may have been watchtowers, as they stand near trade routes, and the entrance to them is at a height of several meters. A curious discovery in Egypt. 2 divers in Egypt have discovered unique artifacts from the Greco-Roman period, raising hundreds of ancient relics from the seabed. However, instead of handing over the finds to the authorities once stood. As a result of the police operation, 448 items were confiscated. The legendary winged horse. Many of the bronze artifacts have become covered with a turquoise patina due to centuries spent underwater. According to the examination, the finds date back to the period from 500 BC to 400 AD, covering the reign of the Ptolemaic dynasty and the subsequent dominance of Rome. The divers are suspected of attempting to steal and possibly hide some of the artifacts.
Hand axes 300,000 years old. in the desert of Oman, where the sun shines brighter than any. So cool, isn't it? But that is not all. They also found rock paintings and ancient burials. These finds, like jigsaw puzzles, will help scientists put together a picture of Oman's history so that we can all learn more about how people lived then. We found all this in the desert of Rub al-Khali, which is called the Empty Quarter. Here, scientists even discovered an old dune in a riverbed when there was much more water in these places. And another amazing discovery, scientists have found the eggs of an ancient species of ostriches, which has long since died out. And the second team found traces of an ancient settlement which was built in the 3rd millennium BC. This place became an important trade center during the Bronze Age. And all these findings will help us better understand how the climate has changed and how people have adapted to these changes. In fact, a great piece of history is hidden under the desert sands. Antikythera mechanism. It is impossible not to mention the most unique archaeological discovery, which many consider to be the first known analog computer, the Antikythera mechanism. This complex device was created to predict astronomical events such as planetary positions and solar eclipses, and could track cycles including the 4-year period of the Olympic Games. It also allowed for the accurate calculation of lunar phases and solar years. Its functionality and complexity are astounding, considering that it was created more than 2,000 years ago between 150 and 100 BC. The Antikythera mechanism was discovered in 1901 in the wreckage of an ancient ship that sank near the Greek island of Antikythera. Its discovery was a real sensation, since the mechanism consists of many bronze gears and wheels, which makes it incredibly complex for its time. The largest gear in the device has a diameter of about 13 centimeters, and the overall design indicates a high level of skill of ancient engineers. Scientists continue to study the artifact to this day, using modern technology such as X-rays and 3D scanning to uncover all of its functions. The Antikythera mechanism is considered evidence that the ancient Greeks possessed knowledge and technology that was lost for centuries after. Strength of ancient Roman concrete. The ancient Romans were true masters of construction. They built many roads, aqueducts, ports, and huge buildings. Many of these structures are still standing, although several millennia have passed. Scientists have unraveled the secret of this stability. Roman concrete. It was used in the construction of ancient concrete and found white mineral elements in it, lime. These small particles gave concrete a unique ability to self-heal. When cracks appeared in concrete, it itself reacted with water and closed these cracks. Scientists believe that such a secret ingredient could help us make modern concrete stronger and more durable. This will help reduce the environmental impact of
Stations. Scientists have discovered an ancient cemetery. Yes, you heard it right. It is in Paris, the city of fashion and love. Imagine that you are walking the streets of Paris and under your feet, 50 ancient graves, each of which hides its own history. And all this time, they remained unnoticed, despite all the construction work and even the construction of the Port Royal Railway Station in the 70s of the last century. Scientists were able to determine the time of burial thanks to a coin found in the mouth of one of the deceased. Apparently, the 2nd century AD was rich in important events. Imagine how many stories these people, women, men, and even children who lived in those distant times could tell. They were representatives of the Gallic people who lived in Lutetia when this fishing village was under the control of the Roman Empire. It is remarkable that these people were buried in wooden coffins from which only nails have survived to this day. Interestingly, more than half of the bodies were buried with offerings, including ceramic jugs and goblets. Archaeologists also found a complete skeleton of a pig and another small animal in the pit. Perhaps these animals were sacrificed to the gods. Archaeologists have also unearthed personal items such as jewelry, hairpins, and belts. People were buried fully clothed, and several pairs of shoes were sometimes left next to them. Scientists were able to find footprints thanks to the tiny studs used to secure the soles. The researchers say the shoes are placed either at the feet of the dead or next to them as an offering. And sometimes a coin is placed in the coffin or in the mouth of the deceased to guarantee the soul a safe path to the underworld. Charon's obol was intended to pay for the services of a ferryman who in ancient Greek mythology transported. Imagine you are an archaeologist, and in Mexico, in the depths of the ancient city of Palenque, you discover a secret burial chamber of the Mayan civilization filled with unique and mysterious objects. Such an adventure happened to scientists from the National Institute of Anthropology and History of Mexico. Palenque was one of the most majestic and mysterious cities of the Maya. It was also called Lacama. This ancient city is located in the Mexican state of Chiapas. During restoration work in Palenque, archaeologists discovered a burial chamber. Inside was the skeleton of a man, laid face up with his head turned to the north. This was typical for the burial of very important people in Palenque, but that is not all. Large ceramic bowls were found in the tomb, which the Maya used as offerings for the dead. They believed that the deceased would eat from these bowls in the afterlife. And in the same tomb, they found a second burial, the skeleton of a woman. Next to her lay green figurines made of malachite. The Maya believed that this stone had powerful spiritual powers. Palenque, although it was not the largest Mayan city, but its architecture is simply amazing. Thanks to the hieroglyphic inscriptions found in this city, scholars have been able to trace the history of the Palenque dynasty from the 5th to the 8th century AD. So the ancient secrets continue to be revealed thanks to the hard work of archaeologists. And each new discovery is another page in the history of our world.
Robinson by choice.
Whoa, dude, give me some
St.
back.
Helena, remember it? It was there that Napoleon Bonaparte spent the last years of his life. But this tiny island has another story no less amazing. Let's imagine an ordinary soldier named Fernand Lopez, who was the only inhabitant of this island for 30 long years before the arrival of Napoleon. Imagine a ship of Portuguese sailors in 1502 accidentally stumbles upon this island. The water here is clean, there are enough trees, but there are no people, only birds in the trees. The sailors decided to build a kind of outpost here. They built houses, brought in cattle, and planted a garden. Well, Lopez became the first inhabitant and lived here most of his life. Now, my friends, it's going to be a tough one. Once Lopez served in the army and even took part in the conquest of Goa. But having become the commander of the garrison, he went over to the side of the Muslims, and for this he was severely punished. They cut off his hand, cut off his ears and nose, but even with that look, Lopez managed to get the forgiveness of the King of Portugal. However, in his heart, Lopez was ashamed of his disfigured appearance. When his ship docked at St. Helena, he asked to be left here forever. That's how Lopez became a hermit living in a cave, hunting birds and growing vegetables. His story inspired the Portuguese king who invited Lopez to make a pilgrimage to Rome. The Pope forgives him and offers to fulfill any desire, to which Lopez asks to return to his island. And he lives there until his death. Every ship, every sailor passing by this island remembered Lopez, his hospitality and his difficult fate. He became part of the history of St. Helena, along with the famous Napoleon Bonaparte. Erie Harp. A harp over 3,000 years old is a unique artifact of ancient Egypt stored in the collection of the Metropolitan Museum of Art. This exquisite musical instrument dates back to 1390 to 1295 BC, which corresponds to the reign of the New Kingdom of the Egyptians in military campaigns. The strings of the harp, visually tying the head of the captive, may be a metaphor for conquest. The preservation of the object is amazing, given its age. Such instruments were used not only for entertainment, but also in ritual ceremonies, which emphasizes their importance in the culture of ancient Egypt. Older than paper. A story that will surprise and delight all explorers. Archaeologists have found more than 10,000 ancient bamboo and wood inscriptions that are over 2,000 years old. These were original books of antiquity, and they were found in Yunnan, a Chinese province in the southwest. Have you ever seen bamboo books? These are such interesting and unique things that people used before the invention of paper. A wood for the creation of books began to be used much later. Most of the records found date back to the Han Dynasty, which is considered one of the most important in Chinese history. On the plates, archaeologists have found various texts about agriculture, medicine, as well as many administrative documents. Of particular interest to researchers were seal prints, because they tell us about the ancient kingdom of Dian, which was later annexed to the territory of the Han Dynasty. This indicates that ancient China was a country of multi-ethnic cultures. Among the texts, even parts of the Analects of Confucius, an important philosophical textbook on Confucianism, were found. So, on these bamboo and wooden plates, you can find information about everything, from court documents to texts about transport and ethnic relations. Ruins of houses and roads were found at the same archaeological site, which indicates the life of the ancient inhabitants of the Yunnan region. The most famous farter in the world.
Have you ever heard of a man who played the flute using his ass? No? Then fasten your seatbelts because you will get acquainted with the extraordinary story of Joseph. So having plunged under the water, he felt that his stomach was filling with cold water. Fright air or water and release them in a powerful jet. Imagine the distance of such shots sometimes reached several meters. After school, Joseph worked for a while in a bakery, then served in the army, where his comrades learned about his unusual talent. He even arranged performances for them, and after the service, he decided to show his art on the big stage. So in 1887, Joseph Pujol first appeared on the stage of the theater in Marseille, and a few years later he won the love of the audience of the famous Moulin Rouge. He could not only release fountains from his anus, but also make various sounds of different tones. His talent was so unique that he was nicknamed Le Petoman, which translates from French as fartomaniac. Now imagine, Joseph could play the flute, imitate cannon shots, blow out candles from a distance of several meters, and even sing the French anthem La Marseillaise, using only the power of his anus. His shows were visited by such famous personalities as Sigmund Freud, King Leopold II of Belgium, King Edward VII of Great Britain and Ireland. During his performances, audience exploded with laughter and people cried with joy, and of course not because of the smell. One of the most popular acts in his repertoire was a children's show where he, with the help of his unique talent, presented children with the voices of various animals and birds. But unfortunately, the beginning of the 20th century brought grief to Joseph's family. Two of his sons returned from the war disabled, and the third son was put behind bars. This forced Joseph to move away from performing arts and return to the baking business. Joseph Pujol died in 1945 at the age of 88 and was buried in the La Valette Cemetery. Specialists from the Sorbonne even offered his relatives a large sum of money for the opportunity to study the remains of Joseph, but they refused. And so the body of the unique fart man still rests in the grave, keeping his incredible talent a secret. And my talent is to create interesting videos for you and share new archaeological finds and stories from the ancient world as often as possible.
Matriarchy in Crete. Scholars studying the Minoan civilization have noted that in Crete, women were portrayed as strong and influential, in contrast to men. This may indicate matriarchy in their society. The Minoans who lived on Crete were noted for their advanced art and trade, as well as the expansion of women's rights in the Bronze Age. Professor John Younger of the University of Kansas noted that women in Minoan frescoes and pottery are depicted in luxurious clothing and jewelry, while men are presented in a simpler form. Please note that now women generally also look more attractive than men. Minoan women actively participated in social events and religious rituals, which distinguishes them from traditional domestic roles. Scientists suggest that the worship of the goddess in Crete could be evidence of matriarchy. The figurines of the snake goddess and the fresco Women in Blue confirm the important role of women in Minoan culture. The presence of pools in the central places of the palaces shows that women were treated adequately during menstruation, unlike other ancient peoples. From a magical remedy to a serious illness. In ancient times, these stones were worth a fortune. It was believed that they saved from poisons. The Middle Ages were a very unusual time in our history: palaces, dances, and poisons. The aristocracy even took poison in small doses to get used to it. That's where pebbles and bezoars came in handy, which, according to those times, absorbed poison from drinks. They were usually turned into stylish accessories, rings and pendants. But here's a fun fact. One smart surgeon, Ambroise Paré, decided to test whether bezoars actually worked. And it turned out that, no. Typically, bezoars form in animals, for example, when a small piece of fur enters their stomach and begins to become overgrown with minerals, like a pearl in an oyster. Now, of course, these stones are valuable only as museum exhibits, but they never cease to amaze even today. Ritual table in Tava Tepe. In Azerbaijan, a team of Italian and Azerbaijani archaeologists discovered a 3,500-year-old ritual table in the ancient settlement of Tava Tepe. This place is located near the borders of Armenia, Georgia, and Azerbaijan. During the excavations, a round-shaped adobe building was found. The structure includes a kitchen area and a ritual table. Between 1500 and 750 BC, late Bronze Age and early Iron Age, nomadic peoples probably used Tawa Tepe as a resting place before traveling through the mountains. Archaeologists found a ritual table with 8 recesses and many ceramic containers, bowls, vessels made of black-fired ceramics, and long flat stones for mixing food. In the corner of the kitchen there is a thick layer of ash and clay tokens with fingerprints which could serve as food coupons. The entrance originally had wooden columns, and a thatched roof covered the entire complex, which was about 15 meters in diameter. Animal bones and discarded pottery were found outside. The human figurines placed in the sacrificial pits and the fact that the structure was sealed along with all the utensils indicate its ceremonial nature. Fabric dyed with insects. Scientists have examined fragments of dyed fabric found in the Israeli Skulls Cave. These pieces of textiles date back to the Middle Bronze Age. The scientists' research has shown that the dye for the fabric was made from dried insects, Mediterranean kermes. Even in ancient times, people learned to make paints from living creatures. In the Mediterranean, the most expensive dye was purple, obtained from the secretion of the glands of sea mollusks. Another valuable red dye was made from dried female scale insects, such as the Mediterranean kermes, which live on oak trees. Written evidence of the use of such dyes is found in cuneiform texts from the Nutsi Archive and the Old Testament. Archaeologists have also found kermes in Neolithic vessels in France, although they were most likely used for magical or medicinal purposes. The earliest fragments of textiles dyed with kermes come from ancient salt mines in Austria from 1400–400 BC. Kermes was also used to dye the legendary Pazyryk carpet in Altai. The smell of Egyptian mummies. Scientists have studied the smells of ancient Egyptian mummies for the first time, revealing unexpected details about the embalming process. The analysis showed that the mummies exude woody, spicy, and sweet aromas associated with the use of natural preservatives. The researchers studied 9 mummies ranging in age from the New Kingdom to the Byzantine period. Using gas chromatography and mass spectrometry, they determined the composition of the embalming substances: pine, cedar, and juniper resins, myrrh, frankincense, spices, herbs, vegetable oils, animal fat, and wax. According to experts, the discovery will help preserve ancient artifacts and also open up new opportunities for museums. Now visitors will be able to not only see, but also smell ancient Egypt, immersing themselves in the atmosphere of that era. Smells played an important role in the rituals of the Egyptians. A pleasant aroma symbolized divinity and purity, while a foul odor was associated with decay and impurity. Even after 5,000 years, mummies retained incense, emphasizing the importance of this aspect in ancient culture. Dead wheat grains. We have an exciting story from the world of archaeology ahead of us. Carefully, we are moving back 7,000 years. Have you ever heard of Landshut? This is a small town in Germany where archaeologists recently made an amazing discovery. They dug and suddenly found traces of an ancient settlement of the New Stone Age known as the Neolithic. And do you know what they found there? Under the rubble of a collapsed stone hearth, 5 kilograms of burnt cereals were found. A mixture of different types of wheat that were grown in the Neolithic era. Imagine our ancient ancestors used these cereals to make bread, perhaps for winter storage. However, something went wrong, and the oven in which they dried the grains collapsed. The cereals were burnt, but they have perfectly preserved to this day. Maybe there was a fire. Who knows? This is a very rare and important case for science because usually organic materials used by people in ancient times are not preserved to this day. These burnt cereals were sent to a special laboratory in Vilnius for further study, and this is what they found. 90% of the mixture consisted of cereal, which had long since disappeared from the face of the earth. This type of wheat, called New Gloom wheat, has only been found a handful of times